We waited 18 hours to get to speak for 2 minutes. And I would have waited 18 hours more. It was a privilege and an honor to get to speak to those state representatives. And all I had to do was go and sign in at a kiosk, and my voice was recorded. And anyone who submitted online a comment to that was also recorded. It's public record. Why do we not have that privilege in Oklahoma? Why do I not get to go up there and sit in the hallway for 18 hours to speak for 2 minutes? Why do I not get to take a photo or a video? Because a dictator told me so? Excuse me, chairman. This is not just about wind turbines. This is not just about human Earth. This is not just about our farms and our food supply and everything we love and hold dear. This is about our basic rights as American citizens and as children of God. And we didn't even realize they were taking it away from us.
Tonight we have a pleasure. The first time I ever heard Saundra speak, I was impressed. Very impressed. I didn't even know what her last name was. I knew that there was donkey milk involved. I thought that part was it. And I'm going to ask that you share a little bit of that story so that you can understand why she did this. What her and her family do. But tonight, I want you to give a patriot, a person who will never back down, a real hearty Red Barn welcome to Saundra Traywick, a patriot of America.
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you all for having me tonight. Can you hear me okay? It's an honor to be here. Every time I speak, it's different, and I've often thought my slideshow is finished. There is nothing else that they can throw at us, and then there's something else. And so tonight is another night where it was heavy on my heart to be here and to share what needs to be shared. So please pray for me that I will speak what the Lord wants me to say, and that it will hit the hearts that it needs to, so that hopefully we can turn things around for Oklahoma. I want to thank Dana Shaw for being here, Representative Jim Shaw's wife, who accompanied me, and she has just been an amazing friend and encourager through all of this. I want to thank the youth, Kennedy Garza, it's great to see you here, and for Congressman Burkeen, thank you so much for being here. We're so glad to have him on our side and fighting for us. So to get started, why do they call me the donkey milk lady? Well, when my oldest daughter was 6 years old, literally overnight, she suddenly had symptoms of OCD, separation anxiety, hallucinations, rages, extreme aversions to germs, and a litany of other things overnight, from being totally normal, on target, brilliant, creative, to suddenly not able to even comprehend the simplest story that I was reading to her. And we were one of the very fortunate and blessed ones that got a proper diagnosis of pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with strep. Short name, PANDAS, but it is not cute or cuddly. Essentially, her immune system was attacking her brain after she got strep, sort of like rheumatic fever attacks your heart. And the symptoms are one of the main ways that it's diagnosed. In Oklahoma, we're blessed to have the first test for this in the United States. It's called the Cunningham Panel, molecularlabs.com. I share this now because when I've been giving this talk, it's part of our story and it's part of why I'm here. And now I have parents and grandparents reaching out to me and saying, I think my granddaughter has this. The doctors missed it. My daughter has this. What was that test? So I want to start by telling you that. because that is part of our mission to help more children get properly diagnosed and properly treated. Now, this is something I don't always share, but it's really important to know. Some of these children are also extremely depressed. They're also suicidal. And some of them, I have even heard and confirmed this with different nurses that are in the field, some of them, the part of their brain that is on fire is the part that makes them identify as a girl or a boy. This was not a symptom that I'm very thankful to the Lord that my daughter never struggled with, but I've heard it in pandas groups. And so we as Oklahomans have one of the only tests in the world for this. Why are we not leading the way with legislation saying, we're going to test these kids if they start having these problems? We're going to make sure that this is provided, because this test is over $1,000, not covered by insurance. Why are we medicating symptoms and not treating the root cause? So there's that. Now, when our daughter got sick, she's now 17. Most doctors didn't know this existed. Most doctors believed that the parents were making it up, and they would often misdiagnose them as ADD, ADHD, autism, schizophrenic, any litany of things, and then they would medicate them with antipsychotic drugs, medicating the symptoms. Now, when we got our daughter diagnosed, they said, oh, she's got strep throat, get her on some antibiotics, she'll be fine. Really incredibly grateful the Lord led us to a doctor that diagnosed her properly, but I will tell you it was not that easy. When we got her on the antibiotics, she got new symptoms. She got a tic, a blinking tic. Some kids get a throat tic. Some kids get other vocal tics. Some kids are diagnosed Tourette's. So I called the National Institute of Health and said, what do we do? Because doctors didn't have answers for me. They said, well, our best guess is antibiotics every day until she's 18 or 21. Or IVIG treatments, which is an infusion of about 1,000 different donors' blood. And knowing what I know and knowing that they were guessing, I thought, well, if they're guessing, we can do our own guessing and we can pray. And short version of this story, the Lord led us to donkey milk. Within her first dose of donkey milk, within about 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, she said, I love you, Daddy, to my husband for the first time since onset 3 months before. Something that was one of her OCD things that she could not do. And so if you're a dad or you're a mom, you'll know you'll do anything to hear your little girl say, I love you. So we got some critically endangered American mammoth donkeys and started milking them. We are one of the only donkey dairies in the United States. Then we got on the news, we were on billboards, we started making soap and skincare with it because I couldn't give it away. Everyone thought we were crazy, and we were just trying to tell them this is the closest to any milk to human breast milk. In Italy, it's well known. In South America, it's well known. In Eastern Europe, it's well known. But here, we heard every joke in the book, and trust me, I have heard them all. So we got on the news, all of a sudden everybody sees you on TV and then they think you're telling the truth about something. Imagine that. And we had more people coming to the farm than we knew what to do with, and I had people reaching out from around the United States. We've even had someone come all the way from Canada to drink fresh donkey milk from us. But I couldn't stand to tell people no. So we also became the first in the United States to import freeze-dried, pasteurized donkey milk. Now, why didn't we just start shipping it to people? Because it was against the law. And I knew that to share my story and to share our faith in the process, to help more kids get diagnosed, I needed to not break the law, to always be honest, and to do everything we could to make sure they could never tell us we were doing something wrong. I even looked into Oklahoma state law. Guess what? It says cow milk and goat milk. Nothing about donkey milk. Imagine that. So we could tell people our story. We could tell people that we have donkey milk for sale and they can come to the farm and get it. I'll tell you more about that later. One day, we went outside and there was a horrible smell. I mean, smelled like something was dead and a gas leak and had been dead for a long time. Rotting carcass, blood, chemicals, and death all mixed together. I grew up on a farm in Kansas. I had never experienced anything like this. Instant headache, feel like you're gonna throw up. we discovered it was something called around us humaner or biosolids or biosludge. Sometimes they just shorten it to sludge. It's everything flushed down the toilets in Oklahoma City, Fort Worth, the big cities and the not so big cities, because this is the cheapest thing they can do with it. They tell the farmers it's safe, and they truck it out to farms, put it on their land, and call it fertilizer. Everything flushed down the drains, including chemical abortions and all that goes with it, goes to the same place and goes on farmland. Now, I started looking into this and researching it, and I was appalled. One little boy died of a staph infection after he rode his bicycle through this. I believe that was in Georgia. There's strep in it, there was COVID in it, there's all these things, but somehow nobody cared when it was on farmland outside the city. And they often take it outside the districts of the city councilmen, who are the ones making these decisions, outside of their voting district. So I reached out to my friend Jenny White, who was mayor at the time, and she said, well, just do something about it. And now I was one of those people that basically voted for president, and that was about it, because I thought if I left them alone, they would leave me alone. I was wrong. So she said, come to the city council meeting and we'll get it banned. We'll get it banned in town limits, and then we'll go to the county, and then we'll go to the state. She made it sound so easy. So we went to the city, and then they shut us down for COVID. But it took us months to get this done at the city level, and we did get it banned, but not until they had sent someone from California to fight in little tiny Luther. They sent people from the DEQ, reps from the DEQ. When I saw the DEQ truck outside, I was so excited. I was like, oh, the Department of Environmental Quality is here to save the day and back me up. I was wrong. They were here to defend biosolids or humaner and say how great it was. In spite of that, the town council of Luther did the right thing and banned it in town limits. Then we went to our county commissioners, who at the time said they couldn't help us. So then I went to my senator. Senator Shane Jett has run 2 or 3 bills trying to get this stopped. They killed every one right out the gate, wouldn't even let it have a committee hearing. I didn't know at the time what a hornet's nest I was stirring up. I did not know that Representative Kevin Wallace used sewage sludge, one of the most powerful legislators up there, who also controlled the purse strings. But I guess I tend to pick a fight when I pick a big one. And so I started publishing that Representative Kevin Wallace uses sewage sludge, and gave that information to someone who was running against him years ago. He put it in a flyer. So the other side put out a flyer calling me and everyone with me environmental extremists against farmers and ranchers, and cited our group, our Facebook group. So our group is Save Oklahoma Farms and Ranches, that's my page, and our private group is Save Oklahoma Farms and Ranches, The Herd. And that is a little reference to being called political animals as well. Now, this issue is coming more and more farther and farther outside the cities, because as my area gets more populated with multi-million-dollar homes, because now it's the place to move to, they take it farther and farther out. So they're taking it to Lincoln County, they're taking it to Logan County, and they take it to new and unsuspecting communities who don't know it's coming. Now, this slide right here says, this is my Chernobyl. Texas ranchers watch cows die because of PFAS. I had people tell me that's not true, that's fake news. I visited that farm last week. I went to Texas and testified to their state representatives about a bill they had to try to make sure this didn't happen again in Texas. I met this farmer and his wife. I met their neighbor. They have lost 56 cows, a third of their herd, and they're watching more and more of their cows die. The neighbor has lost horses and guineas and chickens and cats and dogs. None of them used biosolids. None of them used humaner. Their neighbor did. It ran off and onto their land. And when people say that can't happen here, that must have just been a fluke deal, that must have been a mistake by the company, which I had a city leader tell me that. I said that company that was dumping it there was Synagro. The company that takes the sludge from Oklahoma City and dumps it is Synagro. Tell me it can't happen here. Now, if you don't know what PFAS is, they're called forever chemicals. They're in, everyone will say, oh, they're in everything. And this is their best defense. They say, the cities and the towns are passive receivers. It's not their fault. They had to do something with it. I mean, we don't want them to have to pay to put it in a lined landfill, toxic waste dump. So we're going to put it on our farms, over our aquifers that have our wells that we all drink from. That doesn't seem like the smartest move to me. Now, I could talk about that for another hour, but you can go to my page and see some videos and the clips from the people in Texas who are now devastated. And let me tell you that Texas did not put in any legislation to stop it from happening in the future. Wow. Neither did Oklahoma. Sorry. Now, they know this is a problem because Congress proposed $500 million to bail out farms contaminated with PFAS from sewage sludge across the USA. $500 million. Sounds like a lot of money, right? They estimate that between 2 and 20 million acres are contaminated with PFAS just from biosolids. We're not talking about the land they also estimated are contaminated from being by Air Force bases because it's also in firefighting foam. So Congress proposed $500 million. If that's 20 million acres on the high end, that would give you $25 per acre to get bailed out, bought out. If it's 2 million acres, that would give you $250 per acre. Well, in 2023, the price per acre of cropland was $5,460 per acre. Sounds like a great deal, huh? By the way, I believe they killed that bill, but they are now proposing bills on the congressional level to exempt the cities and towns from liability. And Senator Rader had a bill last session to exempt cities and towns from liability in Oklahoma. They killed that bill, didn't get it all the way through. Now, this is where it gets really tricky. The EPA last spring put in a rule, because they can just make rules whenever they want. They put in a rule that said you cannot have more than 4 parts per trillion of PFAS in your drinking water. That's the equivalent of 4 grains of sand in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And if you have more than that, you can't drink it. Now, they put in billions of dollars for cities and towns to get their grant money and alert their citizens and put in nice fancy filtration systems so the city and town people have clean water to drink. Meanwhile, they did not put a single limit on PFAS in the sludge that they're taking from the cities and dumping on farmers outside their district who are dependent on well water. So I looked, and I looked, and I looked, and I looked. I believe it was on page 18. I finally found something about people in rural districts on well water. I was like, oh, wow, I can't believe they actually put something in here for us to give us filtration systems for our animals in our gardens and to water our crops. And then I read it. I'm just going to read this to you. Private wells, Section 1459A(j) of the SDWA does not allow EPA to authorize grants to states to address contaminants in communities with individual private wells, unless the purpose of the activity is determining whether the individual private wells should be connected to an existing public water system or create a new public water system. The authority does not provide funding to remediate contaminated aquifers, including treatment of individual wells that do not impact public water systems. What they just did was say, if you are on well water, too bad. If your water is clean, maybe they'll hook you up and take it for the city. If your water is contaminated, if you don't have access to city water, what are they going to do? Plug our wells? Because what they said here is we're not going to give you any money, we're not going to clean up the mess, and we're sure not going to clean up the aquifer that we contaminated. So we were busy trying to live our lives, take care of our kids, milk donkeys, and my mom called from Kansas, and she was all upset, and she said, they're going to put wind turbines all around us. My family farm where I grew up, very populated area. Well, they were worried about the blinking lights and that they were ugly. I had her on speakerphone. My girls were in the car and they both started crying because when we just drive through these, they make them feel sick. It doesn't make everyone feel sick, much like a lot of these things don't make everyone sick. But some people it does. And so it's easy for them to discount my girls and say, you don't really feel sick because I feel fine. How many of you have heard of infrasound? Right, so they can say you're making this up. Well, you know what, the US was actually going to use infrasound as a weapon, but then they discovered it only harmed about 20 to 30%. So it doesn't make a great weapon, but it does make a great weapon for a population in a rural community where they propose 750-foot tall wind turbines, which is what they're proposing in Oklahoma, east of I-35, in highly populated areas. So we knew this was a problem. I didn't know all of the problems, but when my parents said this was coming, they thought, okay, you know, typically they target these communities where most of the people there, most farmers are over 60 years old. They don't know how to start a Facebook group. They don't know how to fight back and get organized. So my sisters both happened to be in advertising, and one was in Texas, one was in Arkansas, and I was in Oklahoma. So we would make trips back to Kansas for county commissioner meetings, and we helped them get organized, and they helped put out press releases, and we got the news out there and fought back. And my parents and a few people, and then they got more and more and more people involved, and they said, we don't want this here. And they got it stopped. 2 years, it took 2 years, but they got it stopped. They got a ban on industrial wind and industrial solar and battery energy storage systems in their county. Yes, yes, a lot of prayers. And they had to replace a county commissioner, but they got it done. So some of the things we found out through that process was the blades of the wind turbines, guess what they're coated in? PFAS. Now in Europe, they already had figured out that they had BPA, and so they were fighting them because they said these had BPA, bisphenol A. Well, the wind turbine companies, they came back and they said, no, 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 don't worry. The bisphenol A is under the protective coating. And that's when I found PFAS is in the coating. So if only 4 parts per trillion is enough to contaminate your water, and we've got wind turbine blades that have it in the coating, which now they're going to deny. Tell them, show me proof. Show me proof you don't have PFAS in your wind turbine blade coating, please. I want to see it. So infrasound, shadow flicker. Through what happened with my daughter, we got connected to a lot of families with children with special needs, children with autism, neurological disorders, and seizure disorders. So when we were fighting in Kansas, I heard about a family that the company actually told them their little girl who had a seizure disorder should just go to the basement when they had shadow flicker because it would give her seizures. That was their solution. Just send her to the basement. Blade throw. People have actually been killed from blade and ice throw from wind turbines. Now, you don't see these in the headlines because why? When you have a lawsuit, the company will come in and say, you want this money, we'll settle out of court and you get this much. But if you go to court and you want this public, you may not get anything. So they have to sign NDAs. So these cases go away. One man was cut practically in half by ice throw. Microplastics, that's another issue. Eagle, bird, and bat deaths and the health effects. So Oklahoma state statute requires a 1.5 mile setback to all public schools that are a part of a public school district. My homeschooled kids don't count. Your kids don't count. When I'm talking ice throw, we're talking about this can go through the roof of your home. But they don't care about you or your safety. All they care about is the money. And let me tell you, there's a lot of money flowing to a lot of pockets in Oklahoma. So people will say she's making this stuff up. Let me quote NIH.gov. In the energy sector, PFAS are known to be employed in solar collectors and photovoltaic cells and in lithium-ion, vanadium redox, and zinc batteries In addition, fluoropolymers are also used to coat the blades of windmills. Does that sound like I'm making it up? And there's some pictures there. You can't see them very well, but it shows the edges, the leading edge of the blades start to degrade. So as they go through the air and they get degraded by the hail and the sand and the wind and the rain, because they're going very fast, eventually they have to get rid of those blades and replace them with new ones, which is a whole other issue in itself. But that's the coating that's coming off. Remember that 4 parts per trillion. Now, industrial solar, the Inflation Reduction Act, which I'm very grateful we're trying to get rid of that. Hopefully we can get that out of the big, beautiful bill. But the Inflation Reduction Act doubled the subsidies for industrial wind and solar facilities. So there's a picture right there of Representative Kevin Wallace. Real proud of the incentives worth $180 million for a solar panel factory. Once again, grateful to Representative Jim Shaw for getting him out of office. That was huge. That was one of the biggest races in this state. If you haven't heard about it, look it up. Yes. Now that solar panel factory did stop, but we are still not out of the woods. So are you all familiar with green hydrogen? This is something I stumbled on, and I think the Lord shows us things that we should see. I had no idea what green hydrogen was, and you would think this is only something that would be happening in California. In fact, the plan I found for Oklahoma had images from california.gov on it. Cars, hydrogen-powered cars, fueling up at fueling stations in Oklahoma. And there's actually a published map of the hydrogen fueling stations all across our state. Already published, already planned. Now, House Bill 4065, authored by Representative Kevin Wallace, and only Representative Rick West and Representative Tom Gann voted no at the time this went through. This is what that bill said. In Washington County, Oklahoma, without becoming a public utility, any city or town within a county having a population of over 500,000 or any county have a population of over 500,000 according to the 1970 federal census, blah, 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 shall have the authority to condemn all or any portion of any water supply and or distribution system, blah, 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 in the production of green hydrogen. Now, there's a couple things about this that I want you to pay attention to. First of all, they said in Washington County, Oklahoma. They singled out in Washington County and then in counties with a population over 500,000. So that would be Washington County, Oklahoma County, and Tulsa County. Now, one of the things they told us, they stood up there and told us, was we can't help just you. We can't single out your county and say no wind turbines there. We can't say, oh, we have to have setbacks just in your county, but they sure did it here in Washington County. Now, the irony was when I found this, I did a little searching, and lo and behold, it said June 24th, 2024, High Plains Resources to start hydrogen testing in Washington County next month. So I found this right when this was all happening. They had the legislation in place for the hydrogen to start going down. They knew it was coming, and they paved the way. Now, why would they be saying we can condemn the water supply for hydrogen? H2O. They take the H's from the O to take away our water and make it hydrogen. Now, what's really interesting, if you go to Legiscan right now and you look up House Bill 4065, Grant Green took that bill and reran it as a new bill, and they crossed off this whole section right here. I've been giving this talk for about a year, and all of a sudden they took the bill and they axed all of the words right here. Why? Because they're done with it? Because they want to erase it? Look up the bill. Now, crypto mining, AI, and data mining, I've actually had a lot of people that had no idea what this was or what it does, and that it can be very loud, which is very abrasive to the people that live next door. Muskogee, they're planning it there. Stillwater, who knows where else in Oklahoma, because we get no notice. But if they don't, if they want this to be quiet, then they often cool it with water. And that is an issue because it uses millions of gallons of water to cool it. Now, when they are using, this goes back to, they use the water and then they discharge it to the wastewater stream. Now, why? What do they use in the water? Look it up. PFAS. It's one of the coolants that they use in the water. Now, the EPA has said that they need to start phasing out the PFAS in their coolants. So if they're having to phase this out until 2027 or whatever year they gave them to get that done by, and we in Oklahoma have no regulations on this, and no one's paying attention to this, and we're courting these AI data centers. Oh, we want them to come here, because not only do they use millions of gallons of water, they also use a whole lot of energy. As in, one AI data center uses the energy of the city of Edmond. So when they tell you we need more energy, and when they tell us Oklahoma is now in an energy crisis, and if you want to really terrify yourself, look that up. When they say and declare we are in an energy crisis, are we having rolling blackouts? Are we having brownouts? No. I don't think we're in an energy crisis. They're planning an energy crisis for us. They are bringing in AI data centers because it will be essentially another city of Edmond, Broken Arrow, over and over and over again, and it will use our water, and it will use our power, and then they will say, this is why we have to have more power, more energy. And it's for you, people of Oklahoma, when right now we are a net exporter of energy. We produce more power in Oklahoma than Oklahomans can use. And that is data straight from an energy interim study at the House, which you can go listen to. Now, I like to still include this because everyone needs to be aware, carbon capture pipelines and sequestration. When I stumbled on this, which again, I think the Lord leads us to these things, this was a map of the United States planned for 2050. And I believe this was actually presented in Oklahoma, and that's how I found it. If you see Oklahoma right there, it's pretty much a mass of CO2 pipelines. And that is one of the reasons I asked that question, although I'm grateful that the federal government hopefully will axe that part of the big, beautiful bill so they cannot eminent domain it, because I have friends that are fighting this in other states and they're being successful. Free Soil Foundation is their group. But here in Oklahoma, this session, Senator Rader put forth a bill saying, we don't need EPA oversight. We're going to handle this ourselves. No big deal. Actually compared CO2 to drinking fizzy water or carbonated drinks on the floor. If you know what happens when you pipe this underground, if it touches your drinking water, it turns to carbonic acid, degrades rocks, aquifers, degrades your water supply. But don't worry, then they can just turn it into hydrogen. And if we think it's not happening here already, the largest carbon capture plant opened in Oklahoma. Bantam project to extract CO2 from the atmosphere. CO2 that our plants need, right? Yeah. Now the problem, one of the many problems with CO2 is, look up Satartia, Missouri or Mississippi. I always get that one mixed up. But zombie, they said it was like a zombie apocalypse because they had a pipeline of CO2 that did burst. I believe there was seasonal flooding. Apparently they didn't plan for that. And CO2 weighs more than oxygen. So it displaces the oxygen and the people start suffocating and the vehicles don't run, including the emergency vehicles. Thankfully, I don't believe anyone died in that incident. But if we have them covering our state. Now, lithium. Some of these are, I've been doing this about a year now, which is amazing to me, but they were planning the largest lithium plant in Oklahoma. And that is now proceeding, as far as I know. We were giving them $257 million federal and state tax dollars to come here. Lithium. Along with that are the BESS systems, battery energy storage systems. Now, if you've seen the fires from Teslas, multiply that. So I'm sure a lot of you probably saw the ones going down in California. Yeah, they're planning these all over Oklahoma as well. Battery energy storage systems, and they're targeting rural areas where they're also targeting wind and solar. I don't think this is going to play for us. It might. Oh, it will. This is about that bill, a different bill that would have exempted hydrogen companies from $10 million in tax. I put this together after I've discovered this bill. It was Senate Bill 1071 by Wallace and Bowles of the House and Garvin of the Senate. This was in 2024. Now, I brought up this bill at a debate, the first debate between Representative Shaw and Kevin Wallace. He wasn't a representative at the time. And I brought up this bill and I said, hey, what about this bill you have that is giving hydrogen companies $10 million in income tax rebates? And they took the microphone away from me and he refused to answer that question. So a few days later, I had already done this video. I had looked up the bill and I looked it up again and I thought, okay, what did I get wrong? I can't believe I got this number wrong, because this bill is a bill about giving a gun rebate to training for gun stuff. And I was like, I know I got it right. I mean, I did this whole thing. I wouldn't have gotten the bill number wrong. So I looked again. It was the last day of session, because it was the day before the last day of session when that debate went down, when I asked that question. So the next day, they completely changed the language of that bill to being a bill about gun rebates. So when anyone looks it up, what do they see? A bill about gun rebates for training gun stuff. So it's a great Republican bill. If you look back, it originally started as that language. Like a year or two before, they flipped the entire bill to being about hydrogen, which is something that's against their rules. You're not supposed to be able to take a bill that's in one category and then make it something completely different. But as we've seen in this session, the rules only apply when they want them to. And leadership can do whatever they want, whenever they want, to cover their butts. Now, I shared that about the hydrogen because I don't like to give this talk and have people feel hopeless, like nothing they do matters, because I also like to joke that there's a $10 million bounty on my head, but I split it with Representative Shaw, because that debate and him seeing a threat to his seat made him completely erase a bill that would have given them $10 million of our taxpayer dollars. Pretty good. So we do have a voice. And when we get good people to run against these guys and they see a threat coming for their seat, they tend to try to do the right thing. Imagine that. This is another case of them feeling the heat. I found this, and this is the way the Lord works. I'm connected to a state representative, multiple in Kansas as well, because of our fight there. I saw Representative Carrie Barth, who's another amazing fighter. She shared about how in Kansas there was going to be a 4-mile wide transmission line corridor, eminent domain, federal transmission line corridor. That was back in early June. And I thought, oh no, it's probably going to go through my parents. We're going to have to go fight this there. Looked it up. It wasn't going through my parents' place, but then I saw the one coming for Oklahoma. Holy cow. Oklahoma's was 4 to 18 miles wide all across the state. How many of you were aware of when this was going down? Yeah. So I was in June when there was still public comment period. I was shouting about this, and I had a few hundred followers on my page, so people were submitting public comment, but nobody knew about it. How many of you heard about it from your state representative? No. I told some of them about it, and they sure didn't tell their people. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you about a few other things and see that are happening right now. Representative Shaw had a great bill to ban biosolids, humaner, and remediate farms that are impacted. And if anyone tells you this isn't a problem in Oklahoma, they would look up the Investigate Midwest article, the last one that came out, where Oklahoma City admitted they have been testing farms where they have been putting biosolids. And one of them, I believe, tested at 48,000 parts per trillion. They put it in the billions so it wouldn't sound like that much, but when you do the math, it was 48,000 parts per trillion in the soil. There's a problem. Why would they have admitted that in a paper? Why would they have admitted that? They could have just declined to do the interview. Have you guys seen the movie Dark Waters? Watch that movie. So in that movie, the lawyer, it's based on a true story about the farmer who sounded the alarm because they lived downstream from DuPont, and their cows started dying in a similar scenario to what's happening in Texas right now. So the lawyer, one day they got a letter in the mail and it said, you have something called PFAS contamination in your water, no biggie, just wanting to let you know. That started the clock, something called statute of limitations. So I believe what just happened when they put it in the paper is they just told us we have a problem and we're setting the clock, because they tried to put in legislation after legislation exempting them from liability and they couldn't get it through, I believe because we started shouting about it. Because they tried another bill this session to try to exempt them from multiple ways of liability. So if they announce it to people and they put it out publicly, you want to sue? You better get on it. That's right. So I wanted to bring that up because they didn't even hear that bill from Representative Jim Shaw. They instead pushed a bill by Senator Grant Green. That was a terrible bill. It was a show bill. How do I know? Because Senator Grant Green also used biosolids himself. So this, I believe, is a conflict of interest, and he should have exempted himself from the beginning. If you have a vested interest in something, you should not be the one running the bill. They got it through the Senate with flying colors, and then lo and behold, it got to the House, and it didn't even get a hearing in the committee. Killed it. Because it was a terrible bill, it really was. It said we're going to ban this over this amount of time, but in the meantime, we're going to keep putting it on the land where we've already applied it. And it's bioaccumulative, so it builds up contaminants. So the communities that already had it applied would have been doubly, triply screwed over. Excuse me, there's no other way to put it. They also had a terrible wind turbine setback bill put in by Senator Grant Green. I believe it was a 1/4 mile setback from property lines of non-participating property owners. That's about industry standard. They have their own industry safety. 1/4 mile isn't very much when you have a 750-foot tall wind turbine. On the other side, on the House side, Representative Jim Shaw had an excellent bill that they killed. And there were other excellent bills that they killed. And then they worked with some of us in the grassroots and asked, okay, we're working on another bill. And that was, what was the number of that bill? 2751. House Bill 2751. Representative Trey Caldwell was the House author, one of the House authors, and really worked to get that one through the House. And it actually gave a county option so that the county could decide what's best for the county. It had other caveats, like if there was a setback to my house, then I got to decide if I wanted to waive that setback. And why would I ever decide to waive that setback? I wouldn't, but somebody might. They would have to pay that person. So that would mean that the wind turbine company would have to pay more to infringe on your property rights. There's something called inverse condemnation. When they're taking your property without, or taking your rights or your enjoyment of your property without your permission. It's like eminent domain. They killed that bill. And then it was flipped and there was a big shenanigan, and then the House took Senate Bill 2 and changed the language of Senate Bill 2 to be the good language of that bill and tweaked it a little bit, sent it back to the Senate. On the way here, we got word that Paxton and the Senate killed that bill. There are now 0 setbacks for wind turbines in Oklahoma this session. Part of the way they wrote that up keep reading when you see the press release, and I will publish it on my page. Towards the end, they said, what did they say? Because of harassment, we could barely do our jobs because of harassment by, what was it, citizens, the public, something along those lines, harassing senators. Okay, let me tell you where I believe this harassing of senators came from. Myself and a group of maybe 5 or 6 ladies went up to the Capitol to watch Senator Greene's wind turbine committee meeting. I was standing by the door. There was standing room only, and another constituent, Robbie McComas, whose husband Jeff McComas ran against Senator Greene last election, was also there. And we always go live and we do live videos. And it's a public meeting, open meetings, Open Records Act. I was planning on being there. I missed other things to be there. And I was going to video it because a lot of people don't know how to access these videos and see what's happening. He saw me at the door. As soon as he sat down, he said, "There'll be no videoing unless you have press credentials." I then respected those wishes and was not videoing. But when I wanted to, I thought I'm going to take a photo of one of the legislators as they're testifying. He saw me take a photo and he called me out publicly in this packed room with multiple, over 11 or 12 wind turbine lobbyists in this room. And he said, "You need to stop videoing." I said, "I'm not videoing, I took a photo. Is that not allowed either?" And then he shook his head and said no. So after that bill was killed, which was the good bill, some of us left, and I was outside, and one of my friends came out, and she said, "After you left the meeting," he said, "don't let her back in. She took another photo. Don't let her back in any of my meetings. She took another photo." Now, I went and spoke. I tried to go back in, and they said, "No, you can't come back in." And I'm not faulting them. They were doing their jobs. They're very kind. And they said, "We know you. We know you're not causing problems. We've seen you up here before." They were very apologetic, and I feel like they were slightly embarrassed at what they had to do to fulfill their jobs because a senator told them they couldn't let me back in a public meeting for taking a photo. But they came back with, I believe it's Mason's rules, and they said, because of Mason's rules, the chairman gets to decide what happens in his meetings. And so he says no videoing and no photos and no you. So, basically you're out. And I objected to this. So I posted it on Facebook and I took it to social media. And a lot of people were upset about this because we still believe in freedom of speech in our country. And we believe that it is the people's house and we pay their salaries. And apparently this is now considered harassment. Standing up for our rights, telling the public what these guys are doing up there, that's harassment. Am I harassing right now by doing a video telling you all what happened?
We should be harassed.
Exactly. And people calling up there and emailing, was that harassment? And then they would say, well, I've heard from a lot of pro-wind turbine people, but I haven't heard from very many of these no-wind turbine people. Really? Do we have to do a FOIA request to find out the truth about how many emails and phone calls they got? And how many of them were from wind turbine lobbyists or from out-of-state landowners who want to make money off of our dirt? Now, let me tell you something. I went to Texas to testify. I got sick on the way there. It was about a 7-hour drive. I was throwing up all night long. The next morning, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. It's 2 minutes you get to testify. And the hearing was supposed to be at 10:30 in the morning. I asked my daughter if she would do it for me, and she said yes. and I had people praying for me, and I was able to rally, and I was also able to speak. My other daughter is diabetic, also never heard of in our family before. And so we were up at the Capitol waiting for this 10:30 meeting, and we waited and we waited and we waited and we waited. It was 1 o'clock in the morning the next day before they started that meeting. And it went until we left there at about 3:45 in the morning. And they were all upset that our new friends in Texas were upset that they had to wait that long, and they had other people with health conditions, and it was a very long and grueling day. We waited 18 hours to get to speak for 2 minutes. And I would have waited 18 hours more. It was a privilege and an honor to get to speak to those state representatives. And all I had to do was go and sign in at a kiosk, and my voice was recorded. And anyone who submitted online a comment to that was also recorded. It's public record. Why do we not have that privilege in Oklahoma? Why do I not get to go up there and sit in the hallway for 18 hours to speak for 2 minutes? Why do I not get to take a photo or a video? Because a dictator told me so? Excuse me, chairman. This is not just about wind turbines. This is not just about human Earth. This is not just about our farms and our food supply and everything we love and hold dear. This is about our basic rights as American citizens and as children of God. And we didn't even realize they were taking it away from us. This aluminum smelter plant that they're planning, I don't know if you all watched that debacle where it was killed in a tied vote in the Senate yesterday. Did you all see that? They killed it. Same exact committee meeting, and maybe an hour and a half later, Paxton brought it back, appeared to bend the rules about that, to bring it back within the same committee meeting, and somehow the bill that was killed about an hour and a half previously in the same committee meeting suddenly passed, giving them millions of dollars to the UAE to bring in an aluminum plant in your neighborhood. Now, today, I did just a little bit of digging. I don't know if you all have been paying attention to what happens when your neighbors do something that impacts you because they say it's their right to make money. What happened in Texas, the neighbors saved money on fertilizer, and now 56 cows are dead and horses are dead, and they have health problems. Now, your neighbors are planning on making money by putting in an aluminum plant upstream from y'all. Do y'all remember when the dust cloud came over from the Middle East a few years ago? Anyone remember that? Yeah. We had a huge dust cloud from the Middle East that came all the way over here. Do we think that if they have a problem at that aluminum plant, you're not going to have a problem here? But your rights don't matter. And there are actually legislators saying, it's out in the middle of nowhere. But I don't cook on aluminum. Really? When they're making decisions for us, without consulting us, when they're crossing out of legislation to have a two-way street between farmers and communities and the chamber making the decisions for us, that's a problem. And if we don't call them to account, and if we don't ask them to do their job, and if they don't do their job, we support and we door knock and we make sure we replace them with someone who will do their job, which is to represent us. Then they'll just keep on, and they'll keep on, and they'll keep on, and they'll exempt themselves from liability, and they'll say those rules don't apply to me, and you don't have a voice, and if you think you do, you're harassing us. And then they'll show up at your gate and they'll tell you, you can't advertise your donkey milk anymore. Oh, no, we're changing the law to make sure you can't advertise your donkey milk anymore. And what about that freeze-dried milk you have? Can we see that? Because we're also FDA. And then your next shipment of freeze-dried donkey milk, they'll seize it. Hold it for over 7 months, shutting down your business, costing you thousands and thousands of dollars. And then by the time they let it go, it's expired and you can't use it anymore. And in the meantime, they told you you can't advertise your raw milk because we're changing the law in the state. I now have, I believe, who knows how many times I've done this, but I like to claim I am the only one that's had 2 bills run against us, the only donkey dairy. This session, they ran another one. Someone that was mad at me, Senator Casey Murdoch, to come after our donkey dairy. Why? Because I spoke out? Because I used my freedom of speech? Because I said this is wrong? So I can sit back and I can say, you know what? I'm tired of fighting. I want to take care of my family. I want to have dinner with my kids. I don't want to drive across the state, and I don't care anymore. Let it all go to hell in a handbasket. Or we can come and we can tell you what's happening, and I can hope and pray that we all get involved and that the Lord stands for us, because like Nehemiah, none of us are strong enough. None of us are smart enough. None of us have millions and millions of dollars to fight this. But for whatever reason, he brought you here tonight. He brought me here tonight. He brought Kennedy here and Dana Shaw here and a representative from Congressman Burkeen. Thank you so much for being here. And each of us has a role to play, because I don't know if you all know the Bible verse in Revelation that talks about witchcraft and sorcery and all these things that'll send you to hell, and cowardice. So I don't want to be a coward. And when I get afraid and when I feel like it's too much, and when I feel like they're going to come after me and they're going to come after my family and they're going to shut us down, we have to pray. And I appreciate so much the people that say we're praying for you, because that is what keeps us going and that is what protects us, because we are small and we are powerless, but with God, all things are possible. So thank you all for having me. I don't know if there were questions. I'm sure I forgot something. There was something. Did I forget something?
If you have a question, please come over to the microphone here.
Okay.
And stand and ask your question and remain standing. You can line up, ask one question, and then let the next person behind you go.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I also have a document I created early on in session that put in all these great bills and all the really bad bills, and I was tracking them. And what was really interesting to me as I watched it was all of the great bills were killed over and over and over. And what we were left with was a mediocre bill, less than bill. I call them half donkey bills. It's like a mule. It's sterile. It does nothing. So it's what we should not be letting them do is put out these flyers saying, "Oh, I stood against the wind turbines." Yeah. Sorry, no, you didn't. I stood against Humaner. No, you didn't. You put out a half donkey sterile bill and you expected the people to be stupid enough to say, "Oh, thank you, sir." We can't be stupid. We have to actually read this stuff and see what they're doing. So.
We're going to take up an offering now. Chris, would you go ahead and pass the baskets around? I want everyone to have a chance to give tonight and to share in the ministry that Saundra has here. And she's come a long way to share this with us.
There's a question, I think.
Yeah,
Thank you all. Thank you.
So
sweet.
There are a lot of us that have been very active, and they run the same plays. They get the consent from these unnamed people and then the people that really do have concerns, they don't pay any attention, and then people like you that it's a matter of your livelihood and you have to spend all your time doing this. It's like we are expending a lot of effort, and it doesn't seem that we're being very effective in a way that we could be more effective. I mean, whenever there's basically two people in the legislature that determine everything, I mean, it's like we need an overhaul of like the whole system, and not like running around and trying to just survive. We're in survival mode, in like prisoner mode, basically. So have you given that any thought? Like, since you're so active, like, is there a way that we can literally make a difference in like the whole system?
Yes, and we're working on that. But I think we also have to have a very concerted effort of, we can't overhaul all of them, but we can selectively choose who are the most important ones and who do we have someone amazing to run against them. Because I'll tell you, when Jim Shaw first decided to run, I had people say, he just needs to wait 2 years until Kevin Wallace is termed out, and then he'll have an easier race. There's no way he's going to be able to beat him. And I said, they don't have 2 years. There's wind turbines coming for their district. In 2 years, it'll be too late. We don't have 2 years. And thankfully, they didn't listen to any of the naysayers, and they did what was impossible to most.
Statistically, he had a 4% chance of winning that race.
Statistically, he had a 4% chance of winning that race. Yeah. And they threw over $1 million at trying to keep their man in office so he could keep running this type of legislation. And what it took was a lot of prayers and the Lord intervening and them doing a lot of work.
And people in the district who were paying attention and who knew the issues. I don't do microphones. But it was the people in our district who were really getting involved and active, and it became fun to be involved in the race with all of the terrible slander and all of the terrible things that were happening. People wanted to get involved.
Yeah.
And we need the younger people to step up. That was a big thing. A lot of the younger generation came out to vote. They got registered. Talking to your grandkids, your kids, get them involved. That's huge.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. Like, we need the youth here.
We need a new generation of voters.
Yeah. When my daughter went and spoke in Texas, people were so impressed that she spoke. And she's been doing that in Kansas. They were there speaking. And they were nailing these wind turbine companies. I was like, that's my girl. Yes,
We have another question here.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me hold it for you. Go ahead.
Okay, Saundra, since obviously we're not going to get any legislation to help us out for any of these items that you've listed to us, my thought was, and has been from the beginning, as per county, can we not run countywide, all over the state, initiative petitions to set our own setbacks? At least give it a try and do it in multiples, so that if they're going to come against this or try to sue us, it's not going to just be one of us out there like a lone ranger. Mm-hmm. That my idea from the beginning is wait and see, but initiative petition is, I believe, something that we could do countywide.
Yes, and you have been a hero and fought these battles before, so definitely reach out to her. She is amazing. And also, I forgot to mention this, we were just in near Hughes County, and they in Hughes County went to their county commissioners, wrote one up for them, and put in a 1-year moratorium on any wind turbines in Hughes County. That stops it. A moratorium is a pause, and you can write that moratorium for your county commissioners, and you'll probably have to do it for them. John Baca, amazing lawyer, he helped them with it, but you need to put a moratorium on all of these things in your county until you can prove it's safe, because your county commissioner's job is to protect the health and safety of the people. They seem to have forgotten that. They think it's just their job to do roads. No, it's to protect the health and safety. If this is not safe and it is not healthy for them, put a moratorium on it. Put a moratorium on an aluminum smeltering plant in your district until it can be proven safe. Because I do not want to hear another state legislator say Trump says it's good, so we have to do it. You represent our state. You're not elected to go up there and be a federal representative. You're here in Oklahoma. You do what's best for Oklahoma. You protect Oklahoma. If they want to do this, put it on federal land out in the middle of the desert, but not next door to us. And there's someone here tonight, it's going to go 2 miles from her house. And she is thinking about moving back to Finland because her freedoms are being stripped from her here in America. If that doesn't break your heart, I don't know what does.
Well, Saundra, my idea was that we would share among counties, and so every county doesn't have to write their own resolution.
Right.
That we can do it once and share and get together and maybe have one huge meeting somewhere.
Yeah.
That we don't have to fight this thing by ourselves.
Right.
But as you mentioned that the county commissioners represent us,
Yeah.
well, they're just like these legislators. They represent industry,
Right.
as Jim Shaw brought out in his speech. They're not representing us, but they are representing industry.
Absolutely.
And it's not in our best interest right now.
Yeah.
Right. I absolutely agree. Now, on that aluminum plant, I forgot to bring up the red mud. Have you all looked into that? It produces tons of toxic red mud, and apparently they have no idea and still have never come up with a good way to dispose of this stuff. So they just have to keep it somewhere. Now, if you look up Senate Resolution 30, last session by Paxton, he wrote a resolution and sent it up to Congress that essentially said, we won't let any of these radicals, use the word radicals, get in your way for any of these worthy projects like transmission lines, and then we saw the transmission line corridor, or any of these energy projects, or critical minerals and mineral processing. That was last session. They knew this was coming, and they paved the way, and they said, we won't even put in things like, they said essentially taking away the Clean Water Act and pesky regulations.
What was the number?
Senate Resolution 30 by Paxton. So now it makes sense, doesn't it? What happened in that meeting yesterday? Let's rehear that bill until we get it through.
Yeah.
Was there another question?
Next question.
Oh, fluoride as well. The aluminum process creates a lot of fluoride. And in Iceland, they had a lot of fluoride contamination of fields and farms nearby when their filters stopped working and contaminated a lot of the area around it. So look up the fluoride contamination along with the aluminum smelting process. There was someone in the committee meeting who said, has there been anyone looking into the environmental impacts of this? I can't remember that representative's name, I'm sorry. And the answer was, no. No. That was fine. Do pass. Go ahead, sorry.
We attended a meeting regarding this in Ainola yesterday, and the Tulsa port engineer talked widely about how strict requirements there are. But I don't feel safe, and we are actually less than 2 miles from that area. So, I have one comment and then 2 questions. First of all, it's just amazing to hear you again, Saundra.
Thank you.
We absolutely need people like you and Representative Shaw.
And you. I don't want to lose you to Finland, so thank you for being here.
Sometimes it just feels that we are in a fight from all sides, and of course I can't fight at the level that you can. But you mentioned Grant Green, Senator Grant Green, and I've called his office, I do not know how many times. They don't take phone, they never call back. And last time when we were in Oklahoma City, for my dentist, my husband and I, we went to meet Julie McIntosh, who is fantastic, and our senator there. And the door is closed to Grant Green. I have wanted to march in, I have wanted to talk to him, the door was closed. Mm-hmm. So there is no chance to get in touch with him. So But I wanted to ask you, didn't mention solar panels today.
Mm-hmm.
And how much do you know about what I just recently listened to at the People's Voice
Thank you.
at Ramble? They talk about how they contain, Chinese
Kill switches.
kill switches, and
Yes.
they will be able to connect to people's Wi-Fi's, but also kill all
Our grid. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. That was, I knew I was forgetting some things. Yes. So actually Representative Jim Shaw shared about that. It was on Reuters. These solar, and I believe Congressman Burkeen has also been addressing that. There are kill switches that the Chinese have put in the components, essentially giving them the power to shut off our grid to a lot of these renewables because the components come from China. So I'm assuming they're probably also in the wind turbine blades. I mean, in the wind turbine turbines themselves, kill switches. So that is a huge issue. The solar panels, they're planning, the solar is another huge issue here. And there's something behind the meter, and I want you to finish your question, but don't let me forget to address behind the meter.
Yeah, and there's also in Chinese, whatever, it can be even in cooking equipment,
Right.
that they can connect to your Wi-Fi. They get all your information from your computer and
Right, from your smart home. That's so smart.
well, yeah, from all your whatever comes from China.
Right. Yes. Yeah, and those kill switches are a really big deal. So thank you.
Yeah, and then this is actually equally much to Congressman Burkeen. To have the green scam or whatever it was called removed. Does this mean all this money to federal money for windmills, federal money to, like, and I've talked about it many times, to spray us, to poison us from the skies and everything? Is that also something that's being looked at, that money for that kind of things is being
I
removed?
personally haven't heard of government subsidies going towards that, so I can't address or know that answer. It's the things that are written in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, the Inflation Reduction Act.
And of course it's money from very many private entities like Bill Gates and even Denmark's richest family. And but it's like I hope and pray and cry to God that that poisoning, horrendous poisoning, will be stopped.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you for praying, and thank you for being here. So great to see you again.
Thank you.
Can I address that before I forget, the behind the meter thing? So that actually just passed, and there was a bill, and they essentially do these bills and don't really let legislators know what they mean. And so they'll put in something that makes it look like a good bill. And it sounds great. It's a bill that essentially said companies and industry can now produce their own power for their company to use, and they have to use some oil and gas to do this. So it looks like a great pro-oil and gas bill. However, what we're now seeing, like with this UAE smeltering plant coming in and these AI data centers coming in that are going to use as much power as this town of Edmond. So let's say one of these big companies wants to put in an AI data center, or the aluminum plants also use a lot of power, So you're seeing a theme here. Power, 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 water, water, water. That one needs to be on the port so that it has access to the water. So this behind the meter bill then gives the companies the right to not have to connect to the grid like the rest of us. They can then produce their own power. Now, how are they going to produce their own power? That's easy. They just killed all the bills protecting us from wind and solar, any of that. battery energy storage systems. So these companies that have all the money can then come in, buy up all the farmland, all the land around that industry, and blanket it in solar and wind turbines to produce power for themselves. And oh, here's a little caveat. They then get to sell it back to the grid, to the peasants like us who have to pay for it after we subsidize their wind and solar for them to have power that they can then grant back to us. And that bill just passed. Now, if you think farmland is expensive right now, wait a month. Because I guarantee you, if they haven't already, they're going to be buying up land around all these plants and around all these factories that they're proposing in Oklahoma, and we can't compete with the UAE that's using our millions of dollars to come here. So how much land will be left, and how can you fault a farmer who's struggling because of commodity prices? We need to be buying direct, paying top dollar for our beef, our pork, our eggs, and not batting an eye at it and saying, yeah, I want to pay you instead of the middleman because I want to make sure you're still here next year. So that's the behind the meter thing. Sorry. Oh, that was Grant Green's bell. Just a little harassment there.
Thank you so much for coming to speaking to us tonight.
Absolutely.
My question is a little bit more at the federal level. Is there anyone in this assembly tonight who knows anything about one of the hundreds of executive orders signed on January the 20th of this year by President Trump declaring a federal energy emergency, thereby giving the federal government opportunity to declare eminent domain anywhere the feds should wish by means of what means? I'm not entirely sure. I heard this on the Trent Lewis broadcast on May 12th. So that states like Iowa, where I hold land, and its neighbor in South Dakota, where Mr. Lewis lives, even though they've labored in session to try to bring bills forward, no eminent domain for private gain goes right out the window, because then Uncle Sam can say, oh, but my dears, we're under an energy emergency and we may do whatsoever we jolly well wish. Does anyone know anything about that status and who might engineer such a plan? Thank you.
Yeah, so we are now under an energy emergency, and like I said, we're not experiencing rolling blackouts, and we have plenty of power for Oklahoma, but if all of this industry comes here, we no longer will. And there is a document that actually states that Oklahoma itself, Oklahoma now has an energy emergency. And I don't really like to address everything happening federally because it seems so big and so impossible. And I don't want people to get overwhelmed, and I don't want people to think there's nothing we can do, because I believe there is something we can do. I believe that we have states' rights. I believe that we have autonomy, and I believe our county commissioners have power, and I believe each of us has more power than what we think we do. And so I like to do what we can do here. And I'm grateful for great congressmen that are doing what they can up there. And we have to stay involved, and we have to pray and pray and pray, because this is so big and it is so huge. And we need to stay vigilant and know what's happening. And if we can stop these things on our soil here, there is no emergency for energy here. And one more thing I want to share. All of this ends, every single bit of this ends. I'm like, you know how the doctors saved the day during COVID? Farmers say no, this ends. Farmers say no to human air. Farmers say no, I'm not going to sell it to solar. Farmers say no, I'm not going to put those wind turbines on here. This ends. We don't need legislation to tell us we have to take this or don't have to take this. Right now, they're not eminent domaining for solar or wind, and they can't in our state. Pray that they don't make that a federal mandate, but right now they can't. So all we have to do is say no, because it's all the money, 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 money. And they can offer a lot of money for this land. But if we see the future and we want our kids to have food that's not insects, what's that worth? What's that worth? So, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I don't know a whole lot about this biosludge issue. I mean, I'm learning a lot tonight, but being poisoned from so many directions, it's hard to keep track of it all. But I am aware of a manager of a sewer treatment plant near Tulsa. I know him through a friend who knows him really well. And she said that people swing through the sewer treatment plant and get free sludge and take it home. I mean, how often is this happening? Is it everywhere? Is this, and how do people not know how many poisons are in that water? How could you not know how much poison goes down the toilets?
Right. Yeah, like when you use bleach to clean your toilet. Yeah. On the pharmaceuticals and the chemical, it's free. It's easy to turn a blind eye to something that's free. And when we have legislators and really high up elected officials that I'm not revealing yet who are using it, that's one of the reasons it's protected.
Are they just ignorant? I mean, are they really and truly doing, or there's some kind of money coming to them so they can be a representative of those that are using it?
Yes, and yes. And so when the fertilizer is free, and they will actually take it to the farmers for free, and then disc it in twice for free. When fertilizer costs go up and up and up, more and more farmers are going to get desperate because commodity prices don't go up and up and up. And so if they can cut corners by using sludge, and the government told them it's safe, and people always ask me, I've had reporters say, oh, are you so upset about the funding cuts to the EPA? I'm like, no. Get rid of the EPA, because for years when I said this isn't safe, look what's happening in Maine. They took it and now they're coming in and saying, your land is only fit for solar. And if you want to go to my page on my Facebook, I went to a meeting of the cities, the municipal city meeting, and I paid my $150 to go, and I got my little name tag. I didn't wear my hat. I wore my past life interior designer type clothes. And I sat there and pretended I was one of them. And I started asking questions. They figured out real quick I wasn't one of them after I asked my first question. Because I started asking, what about these AI data centers? Some of them had no idea what those were. They were talking about One Water and how we're gonna have to permit everyone's water. Farmers using this water, we need to permit them. And I'm like, what about the millions of gallons for these AI data centers? What? Oh, we should probably look into that. That's a great question. I'm sorry, don't placate me. And then they actually had someone get up there and said, now, we as cities need to start looking, and you can go, I'm paraphrasing right now, this is all my opinion. So they said, when we have brownfield sites, Superfund sites, the cities can then eminent domain those sites and put solar on them and make money. And this is one of the things we can do with these brownfield Superfund sites from PFAS contamination.
I know they want to poison the land and make it cheaper.
And so, but here's the thing, the EPA and the DEQ and all of them are telling them it's safe. And so why would they listen to me? They say I'm crazy because the DEQ is telling them it's fine.
But why would this sewer treatment plant manager
do that?
Be willing to, he knows full well how poisonous that is. Why does he not have the spine to say, no, you can't take it?
Because that's where his paycheck came from. And
this is horrifying. I mean, it's not going to cost him any money to turn people away.
Oh, yes, it will.
It will?
Yes, so this is what they'll tell you, and this is what they told all of us. Well, what else are we supposed to do? Put it in a landfill? I'm like, well, yeah, for one, don't put it on something that belongs in a toxic waste landfill on farmland. And so I talked to one of those city leaders, and he said, well, it's cradle to grave. So what they do with toxic waste is cradle to grave from the time it starts to the grave. Well, the grave is the one that's essentially liable for any contamination or leaks. Grave would be the toxic waste dump, or in this case, the farm. Farmers don't realize this is what's happening. And until they see what happens, even in Texas, they still think it's fine. This was just a one-off, but it's bioaccumulative. So it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. So then you have 48,000 parts per trillion on some land. Does that farmer even know it?
So what we have are a bunch of farmers who think government's looking out for them.
Yes, yes.
They think somebody would have told me.
Not just farmers, but all of us. We've all been thinking the government's looking out for us, and that somebody's going to tell me if someone's poisoning me, and apparently that's not the case. And it's certainly not these agencies that say they're environmental quality. And another agency, NASTA, National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. All of our states are a part of NASTA. Go to their website, look at who their partners are, and look at one of their policies of this year and also last year was PFAS in biosolids. So none of us got a letter. How many here are farmers? Anybody get a letter about PFAS in biosolids in human waste? No. But they're putting it out there for us. So they told us it's there. We just had to go look for it. We've been told. We're just not paying attention. So their liability's done. They put it out there. We just didn't pay attention.
Tacitly agreed.
Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's so important that we share this information, share what's happening in Texas and Maine and Michigan, because they told those farmers it was safe. And then they came out and said, hey, I want to test your beef in Michigan. And then they said, oh, sorry, you can't sell it. We have to shut you down. And now it's only good for solar. So
Can I comment here because it has to do it? So my thought has been the past days that this is part of a more nefarious plan. Yep. So I'm just thinking, who is behind these companies who claim that this is safe, and all they have to do is test their products and they see that they are not safe. So I think that it's a more nefarious plan, and who are the companies, people who are behind these companies?
Well, you can't serve God and money. And there's the ones that are serving money, and there's the ones that are serving God. And one more thing, they always say, we can't do anything but put it in a toxic waste dump. That's wrong. There's something called supercritical water, and there's a system 374 water, and they are actually using this super hot water, hotter than molten lava, and it destroys PFAS and it cleans this sludge up. It even cleans up oil and gas sludge. So there's technologies out there that can process this. We don't want to do it because it would cost more money.
We're just owned by these chemical companies. The initiatives aren't stop the poisoning. The initiatives are always clean up the poisoning. But we know who's making all these chemicals. Right. You can go to Home Depot and get enough poison to kill a whole country in the Home Depot on your corner. Yeah. And people don't care about that. They just load it up in their basket and go home, pour it in their dirt, and let it run into the river. Right.
And that's actually a bigger deal than farmers. People always blame the farmers, but individuals that buy it and put it on their little bit of yard, they don't look at the dollars and cents, so they just use it in massive amounts. Oklahoma tried to run a bill to exempt the chemical manufacturers from liability for causing cancers. I believe that one was killed, but it took a massive effort of the people.
That's like the Reagan Act, 1986.
Sorry, was that me? Yeah. Sorry, I think it came back.
Yeah, I'm finished.
Yeah, so that is a very good point. Oh, one more thing. I actually met a guy here in Oklahoma. They have another company with microbes that eat the sludge up. Wow. He said they would have little towns come to them and say, we have our lagoons are overflowing. They're quoting us $2-3 million to come and dredge the lagoons and take it and land apply. This company could come in and do it for $200,000. I think it's AMS Solutions. And so they were doing it for $200,000 or $300,000. They did it for a prison here in Oklahoma. The bugs, microbes, eat all the sludge down. They don't eat the PFAS, but then it's in the lined bottom of the lagoon. No big deal. Cleans it all up. No problem. Saves money, saves taxpayers money. Wow. Why aren't we doing that? That's God's solution. It's all organic. And it would save us money. Why don't we use these solutions? And I'm sick of legislators, planning interim studies without bringing the experts on board. We need to take this into our own hands and make sure the real studies are done and the real information gets out there. Yes, sorry.
First of all, I have a quick comment as from an ignorant city dweller. So I always thought, the sewage treatment plant took care of all the bad stuff in the sewage, but apparently that is not true at all, and I'm thankful that I can learn all this. Yeah. But I have a quick question for you, and that is about the transmission corridors. You mentioned it, and you said you got a bunch of people to contest it, but I didn't know what happened with it. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was comical, actually. Very stressful for a while, and a lot of people got involved when they found out about it.
And people around the nation got involved because these corridors were across the United States. Big one in Oklahoma. Panhandle would have been completely red. And they got together and they started not protesting, that's not a good word, opposing, and making their voices heard. And all of a sudden, I think it was in November, it was after Trump was elected, a bunch of our legislators showed up at a meeting and they said, they basically all took credit for stopping it. And they all said, it's done, and next week, we made some calls, that wasn't exactly what they said, but they essentially all took credit for stopping it. And next week, Trump's going to come out and say the federal transmission line in Oklahoma is done. So I did a little post and I said, bet me next week, Trump comes out and they say all of these transmission line corridors are done. And guess what happened? They did, because they come in and they take credit and they put out a press release and they say, I stood against the transmission line corridor. And some of these people were people I had notified about it who said nothing about it. Nothing until it was a done deal. And the people standing up, again, I believe made a difference because enough people got involved and they pushed back and they said, we don't want this. And they got that stopped. However, they're still planning transmission lines across the state because they have to have transmission lines to transmit all of this wind and solar power, and it's intermittent and hard to transmit. And they never talk about that when they talk about property rights. They always say it's my property right to put on these wind turbines, and they fail to mention that the power doesn't just magically go where it needs to go, and that then they will take someone else's property to eminent domain it for a transmission line to get it where they want it. And so that person's property rights don't matter. The person whose 56 cows die don't matter. The person with a kid with seizures doesn't matter. The only ones that matter are the ones they say matter.
Yeah, well, I just moved to a property in Owasso on 75 acres, and when I looked at that transmission line, I was like,
I'm sorry.
that might be coming right through there, so that's
right.
why I was asking about that. But it's still a possibility, you're saying?
They still have lines, multiple lines proposed to go through basically in those areas. So it's something to definitely pay attention. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you all. I really appreciate it. Oh, here's...
I just have something to say real quick. I work with alternative medicine and wellness clinics.
Thank you.
And I noticed that we talk about PFAS a lot. So there's PFAS in the environment. It gets into our bodies.
Right.
You might know this already, but I want to share this with everybody else. There's a way to get PFAS out of the body as well. And it's with humic and fulvic acid. So if you know something about that, we'd love to hear about it. If anyone here wants to know more, then I'll share that with them, of course. So.
Oh, that's great. If you want to share more about that, that'd be... And you can go comment on my video as well of this and share more too. That'd be helpful.
I'm not the expert in it. My girlfriend is a research scientist. So she knows a lot about this. I was just texting her about it, and I just feel like I have to share it with everybody here. But I can definitely share that with everybody.
Yeah.
And we also know how to test for it very cost effectively. So,
really?
Yeah.
That is wonderful. Thank you. Please reach out to me and tell her to reach out to me, because when we dream big, we want to prevent this from happening, but we also want to form a coalition of researchers and scientists and ways to fix this, because our government isn't. So that's what private industry should do. So I believe he's connecting us with people. I now know Representative Reagan Paul in Maine. She's amazing. She's fighting this there. We know representatives in Kansas. We know representatives in Texas. And the Lord is putting together people that I think, if the government isn't going to protect us, we protect us. And that right there, let's come up with solutions, because we're better than this. There's ways to stop this, and there's ways to fix it, and there's ways to remediate the land and the aquifers. They don't want to. They want to tell us that it's finished and it's done and these are forever chemicals. Well, God gives us ways to bring things back and restore. So thank you.
Sebastian, why don't you share that with us, and we'll make sure that other people get all
definitely.
And reach out to me.
Sure.
Save Oklahoma Farms and Ranches is my page.
I was following you, and then my phone went off. So, yeah, I apologize about that.
All right, thank you so much. Is that it? Thank you all for having us. You've been so sweet and kind to bear with me in my long-windedness. I appreciate it.
Sorry, can I use the mic here?